We are now live, but they can't see us. They only see the timer.
Oh, great.
Dr. Ray.
Yep.
Dr. Ray,
Yes.
can you see this?
I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Oh, you can't? Oh, sorry.
Hi, Julian.
Dr. Gillian, you can go ahead and start us off.
Oh, we can start. Hi, Julian.
Yes.
Hello, how are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
I'm in the middle of a house move, so I'm a bit demented. As you can see,
Where are you calling from?
Oh, I'm in Ireland, south of Dublin.
Oh, southern Dublin. I've been to Dublin. Beautiful. Is it cold
In
now?
Wicklow. No, it's very nice, but we had a bit of an extended heat wave. It's still about, I don't know, late teens Celsius.
Okay. Okay, so are you doing barbecues?
Yes. Although I'm moving house, so I have no idea where my barbecue is. Or my barbecue is one place, and my gas tank is another place. So, ordinarily, perhaps.
I'm really pleased to meet you, Gillian.
And you, thank you.
Yeah, I'm so delighted to be having this conversation with you. Paul, you want to say something? You can
Julian.
jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, finally we meet. It's a pleasure.
Yes, we're chatting quite a long while, aren't we? A couple of months now.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And you catch me at my crazy time. Literally, today is the last day, so I am just after this call. I'm running around packing the rest of my boxes and trying to clean the place, and it's very stressful.
It's all right.
Okay. I know we have about 3 minutes before we start, Gillian. Paul, I'm sure you'd like us to give the attendance up to 5:05.
Yeah, you can sure do that.
So I can engage Gillian a little.
Yes. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So Gillian, tell me, why are you moving houses?
Oh, it's not by choice. My landlady, her daughter wants to buy the house, which is lovely. It's very nice for them. But the only problem is in Ireland, we have a huge housing crisis at the moment. We have a shortage of housing. So trying to find places to rent or buy or both is very difficult at the moment.
Okay. My experience in Dublin was beautiful.
Oh, Dublin is great. It's lovely. I grew up there. It's a great city. It's intimate. You know, it's not too big.
And the transport system is fantastic. I remember taking a train. Was it a train or a tube to the nearest shopping mall, and that was a good experience.
We do have 2 tram lines. We had tram lines back in the 50s, whatever, and then they got rid of them all for some reason.
Did.
And then they put in some. We've got new Lewis and Dart lines, train lines above ground, and they are quite good, but they don't connect.
Oh, they don't connect.
No. I'm not an engineer, but you'd kind of think you'd have them connecting at some stage, because that would be kind of like joined up thinking. But anyway.
And have you been to Africa?
I have been to South Africa.
You've been to South Africa?
Yeah, I've been to Cape Town and I've been to Johannesburg.
Did you just love Cape Town?
Cape Town was lovely. Well, actually, Cape Town was for a conference. So I went up Table Mountain, which was lovely. And then Johannesburg was for an equestrian safari at the Waterberg region. So that was amazing. Very beautiful. But just, they're the only 2 places I've been so far.
Amazing. We'll be extending an invite to you to Kenya.
Well, I'm sure I would love to come. I definitely would.
We'll be glad to have you here for some time. We're almost making time now, Paul. Are you happy for us to start?
Yeah, you can go ahead and start now.
You can go ahead and start.
But there's a lot of background noise. Is that just me or? Oh, it's gone.
Oh, that's better. Yeah, that's
much better.
That must have been on my side.
Okay, Paul, we have your permission to start?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, as we've done in the past, Paul, I want to give you the first 3 minutes just to briefly tell our audience today what we are all about, what ABIA is all about, just in under 2 minutes. And then I'll quickly do an intro before I bring in Gillian. Over to you, Paul.
Okay. Thanks so much, Dr. Gillian. My name is Paul Makolaka, and I'm one of the co-founders of Africa Blockchain Youth Ambassadors, that is ABIA. And the reason why ABIA exists is to solve a number of challenges or a number of gaps that we identify, especially in Africa. Now, a lot of people, when you hear about blockchain, or rather when you hear about cryptocurrency, a lot of times it has been associated with scam, because I know that there are people who have been conned trying to get into the space. And then also a lot of people think that, blockchain, they have no idea what this technology is all about. And for them, it's something that it's very, very theoretical, that has no practical applications. So for us, ABIA is that we want to change the narrative that is out there, and especially when it comes to, the masses. We want to let them know the potential that blockchain, crypto, and Web3 has in the new token economy, because that is where we are headed. And we also noticed a gap in terms of a lot of blockchain or crypto initiatives that have been out there to try and educate the masses. Unfortunately, majority of them, if not all, have been mostly concentrating on developer communities. And for us, if you only concentrate on developer communities, you're only looking at one side of the equation, because you have the demand and supply. So for us in ABIA, we want to solve both sides of the equation. And that is why for us, with our beginner boot camps, we are targeting everyone. That means that, anyone, whether you are technical, whether you are non-technical, whichever course it is that you are doing, we are targeting them so that we train them and equip university students to be our goodwill ambassadors. And we believe that once we have our goodwill ambassadors out there, then they can teach the people that they interact with. Being university students, they are at a very, very vantage point in that, they can access fast internet. So that means that in terms of learning, they can be able to, to pick up this technology, be able to learn whatever it is that they need to learn. And also, given that university students, they are a representative sample of any country. So we believe that we can reach any part of this country or any part of this continent through the university students. So that is what ABIA is all about. And we believe that if we continue doing what we are doing and be able to scale it, in 5 or 10 years, the landscape is going to change. The narrative about blockchain, crypto, and Web3 is going to change. Thank you so much, Dr. Ari. Back to you.
Asante sana, Paul. I am your host. My name is Dr. Julian Drower. I'm the Director of Strategy and Quality Assurance at African Blockchain Youth Ambassadors, ABIA. I consider myself a scholar practitioner. I enjoy bridging the gap between theory and practice. I also enjoy very intense conversations, and I see myself as a conversational intellectual, an enthusiast of blockchain technology, and the Chief Executive Officer of Schedules Business and Management Consulting, an outfit that intervenes in workplace-based problems. Today, we will be discussing a very interesting topic in the subject of Web3 and distributed applications, otherwise known as dApps. We will be inviting our attendees to throw in their comments on the comment section and also pose their questions to our very able panelist and speaker by the name of Gillian Godsill. We are very glad to have in our presence today Gillian Godsill. And before today, Gillian, I thought that technology and specifically blockchain was a man thing. I've had a chance to read your profile that's very rich and very expansive in content, and I am persuaded that women can do extremely well in this space. You will, with no doubt, be a source of inspiration to many of our young women and young girls, and also to young men, including older men such as myself, that remain very, very highly inspired by what I have seen you do. By way of introduction, Gillian Godsill is a passionate advocate for blockchain, a seasoned professional in fintech, and an internationally recognized champion for equality on matters homelessness, gender, or the law. She is a co-founder and editor-in-chief of blockleaders.io, author of more than 18 books, a freelance journalist for many publications, including CoinDesk, CityAM, Cointelegraph, CryptoSlate News, Hackenoon, The Irish Teams, and ITN. Gillian is a woman of many fasts, has been celebrated world over. She was named in the top 35 women in crypto by TechRound in May 2022, named one of the hottest women to follow on Matters Crypto by Benzinga, a financial media company. She was a finalist in the prestigious Crypto AM UK Awards in the category of education. Named as one of UK's most influential women, and we are so delighted to have you, on Tech by Computer Weekly 2021, Gillian was awarded Blockchain Journalist of the Year by UpTrends, then largest blockchain social platform, in 2022. She made the top 100 global blockchain leaders list by Lattice 80 in 2019. Alas, the story does not end there. She was awarded the Order of Merit by the President of Liberland in 2018. Welcome to our space, Gillian Gotzel.
Do you know what's interesting? I hope anybody watching or listening, I'm quite an old bird, as they say, and it means that anyone can come into this space and make a name for themselves, or if they've got enough enthusiasm and energy, if you just go at it, even old folk can do it. If an old woman can do it, what can young people do? So much more. And actually, do you know one thing? I've met a young friend. He's in, I think it's Bentley University in the US. And he set up a student club, a Web3 crypto club, blockchain club in the Bentley University. And so much so, this man, he's a lovely young man. He's only in his 20s, whatever. He ended up getting the speaking role in NFT NYC, which is a big NFT event in New York in June. But the funniest thing of all was that he's president of the student crypto club in Bentley, but he also he's an intern for Binance. Anyway, on his big thing, the NFT NYC is a big conference. I don't know, there were several thousand, maybe 15,000 people there, but they mixed up his titles. So it had Alex Kim, president of Binance. So at age 21, he was suddenly president of Binance. So you can do it.
Again, Gillian, nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
By way of introduction and very briefly, who is Gillian Gotzel?
Okay. Well, let me tell you who I am with reference to blockchain and why
Correct.
it makes sense. So it's kind of the shortest story. Well, right. The short version is that I was married, I was living in Ireland, and that in 2008, 2009, I hit the financial crash and divorce at the same time. Not a good thing to do. I would not recommend anyone gets divorced in a recession. Not a good plan. So anyway, my ex went back to the UK with a large house, large mortgage, and he gave all the debt to myself and our two children. That was my divorce present. That was the second mistake that I made, not getting a good divorce present, getting all the debt. Anyway, so I had this big house and I had to do something. I moved out, I tried to sell the house, and I made a video, and it went a bit viral because I kind of said, I have my dream house. It's a nice Georgian manor house, like a 3-story, with a bit of land room. It's very nice. And I did this video to sell it. And I went a bit viral because at the end, I found my dream house, lived happily ever after. And then, no, I didn't. And you can buy my dream house instead. And it was kind of a quirk of nature. It's really weird. So about 2010 at this stage, I became very famous for trying to sell this house. And I was featured in loads of documentaries, and I was in the New York Times, I was in Al Jazeera, Russia Today, Huffington Post. It was crazy. This focus on me, my big house, my big debt, and my divorce, and trying to sell it. And then I got a cash offer for someone to buy the house, but the offer was less than the mortgage. It was about 500,000 euros. And so the banks refused consent to sell. And as a result, they repossessed the home instead. And they sold it for a fraction of its price a few months later. So it made no sense because, as we know, people who are interested in this space, financial systems in 2008 were very, very badly messed up. They were messed up before, but it really showed how badly they were messed up. So I'm now quite famous for all the wrong reasons, not the ones you want to be, and featuring that. And then around that same time, there was this narrative, and maybe you had it in Africa, maybe you didn't, where the banks were saying, everyone's gaming the system, moral hazard. And now, of course, we go, excuse me, the banks were saying that of ordinary folk trying to protect their homes, excuse me. So I got very angry. And you know what an angry woman's like. I became an accidental activist. And also, in particular in Ireland, because we'd had the Celtic Tiger before the crash, a lot of people were really badly affected because they had to pay inflated prices for their homes. I mean, just for their homes. We're not talking about a whole developer class here or anything. And but anyway, as a result, a lot of people, and men in particular, were taking their own lives because they'd failed financially, and it was seen as a shameful thing, which is ridiculous because to fail financially can happen for any number of reasons, including bad management or just bad luck, whatever. But it's not a crime. No one's stealing. There's a kind of mentality that, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're creating, you probably will fail. Anyway, this whole thing. So I got very angry and very activated. And when I became bankrupt, because I had to go bankrupt because when the banks repossessed the home, I still owed the debt. So I became bankrupt. I was the first female bankrupt under the new laws. And now I'm going, this is crazy, crazy, crazy. These ordinary folk are being penalized for, losing their homes and losing their jobs or whatever it was. I was just there was such savagery that was happening, and people were being evicted, and it was just horrible. And you had all these stories about people at the kitchen table, parents trying to cope, and trying to put food on the table for the children, and it was horrible. So I'm now a full-on raving activist at this stage, and I discovered that as I was bankrupt, I wasn't allowed to run for public office. Okay. I went, this is my aha moment. I went, this is ridiculous because I've done nothing wrong. The only people who I didn't pay back was the banks, and they wouldn't let me pay them back anyway. Yeah. So I brought the Irish government to the High Court and all the way to the Supreme Court, and I argued that my constitutional rights are being infringed because I wasn't allowed to run for public office. So the law was changed. I changed the law, and the next elections were the 2014 European parliamentary elections, and I ran in Ireland South, which is a pretty big constituency. And I had about 6 weeks to run. It was mad. It was crazy. I've never been a politician before. And before then, it was funny. When I was interviewed the whole time, people were quite sympathetic. The little woman left behind and the terrible ex-husband going back to the UK. It was kind of sympathetic. Let me tell you, if you haven't done it before, when you become a politician or an aspiring politician, the questions get a lot harsher. There's no sympathy for you. Oh my goodness. I was like, oh, I'm sorry. Did I say something wrong? Anyway, I ran as an independent, and in the end of the day, I got 11,500 votes, which I'm inordinately proud because I had no party. I was on the dole. I had no money. I had to borrow a car. Didn't even have a car at that stage. And I was very happy. And what it did was it gave me back a sense of the miserable years, because I had about 10 years in the wilderness that it was for something. And I know during that time, when I became even more public, a lot of people would approach me whom I didn't know and said, oh my God, same happened to me. Like, it's like almost like an Alcoholics Anonymous thing, whatever. Because you couldn't talk about it because it was a shame. So a lot of people came out and they were able to talk about it. So that's my backstory, right? So then I'm left with nothing. In 2015, I often did a master's because I couldn't get a job. I thought, oh, my life's over. That's it. I'm gone. That's it. And then in 2017, I met blockchain. And I went, oh, there's this amazing technology that democratizes opportunity. And I went, oh, this is so exciting. Now, in 2017, the price was quite high, was 20 again, whatever. I had no money. So I wasn't an OG in that I didn't buy Bitcoin. Sadly, I didn't. But my life would have had a different ending, I'm sure, if I had. But I went, this is exciting. And the two things that I really got, three things. Prior to 2008, whatever, the whole thing was, greed is good and dog eat dog. And, I'm going, that's wrong. I mean, inherently, that's wrong. And when I met this movement, if you like, because before I also had lived through the dot-com boom in 1990s, whatever it was. And the dot-com boom was all about innovation and rethinking the world. So you have your internet came in, all the rest of it. But here there were people who were rethinking the world and lots of innovation with tech, but they wanted to make the world a better place. I went, aha. That's where I want to be and so I learned there was a movement that was powerful. It was disruptive. It was getting rid of middlemen, all these, and also we know that the financial world rules the world. Everything is run by money. Look at the US; it's just money, 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 and people are put to one side. And I also discovered too, as well, personally, I discovered that I had so much privilege. And that people, you don't realize you have privilege. If you have privilege, you probably don't know you've got privilege. Yeah. And I discovered I had privilege because I went to a private school. My parents thought that private education was what they spent their money on. They weren't rich or anything, but they spent their money on that. And I went to Trinity College in Dublin. My first job was at JP Morgan in London. I traveled the world in Singapore and Australia working. I had a huge rake of experience, and my career was going up and up and up until it wasn't. And I learned then that if it was tough for me to get back on my feet, how much tougher is it for somebody without all those things? And people say, "Oh, I worked very hard." Yes, I worked very hard, but so do people who work very hard. And then they don't get what they deserve. They can't get on even the first ladder, if you like, of a success. So anyway, it was a very humbling experience for me to go through, especially the elections. I remember saying afterwards that every vote I got humbled me, but every vote I didn't get equally humbled me. So, and then when I met the blockchain, I went, this is my chance to put the world right. And not just for me, not just for my kids, but for your kids and his kids and their kids, and just generally, to come out with a message that was powerful, encompassing, inclusive, and disruptive. And normally, I wouldn't be a disruptive person. I'm normally quite not disruptive, but some things need to be disrupted. And that's my long short story.
That is so profound. Wow. You've taken us through a whole cycle, the difficulties you encountered, your accidental meeting with blockchain, and the realization of what it could do to change your circumstances and those around you. Amazing stuff. Now tell me, tell us briefly about blockleaders.io. Very briefly.
Okay, this will be brief. Sorry, that other story was the long one. This is a short one. So Blockleaders, back in 2018, with another founder in the space, we founded blockleaders.io, and the idea was to present the founders in this space, because at that stage, it's getting better now, but at that stage, there were very few journalists working in blockchain, and if you wanted to get something published, a story published, you had to pay money for it. It was all very much advertorial, money-driven. And there weren't that many journalists in this space that, I mean, I'm a journalist, I'm a trained journalist. And it was wonderful then to say, right, let's interview these founders. So A, to put in good writing, but B, also, there are some amazing people. You know, I said that all these founders want to make the world a better place. There are some amazing and innovative and crazy and inspired and whatever. There's every type of person in this space. They're not boring, that's for sure. And to have the privilege of interviewing them is just a joy. So that's one of my great joys. I can interview founders who are eminently more intelligent, smart, inspired, creative, crazy than me. So great joy for me and a privilege.
Amazing. Very, very beautiful. Now, I did quite some research on you. Tell us about your role, advocacy role in Electroneum. I hope I've gotten that right.
Yes, yeah. Well, actually, that's quite a big protocol in the African continent. Mm-hmm. And recently I've been doing some interviews with people out of Lagos, two young men who are using it. And Electroneum is interesting because it was founded in 2016. They did a big ICO and they raised a lot of money. And Richard Ells, who is the CEO of it, he had a vision to make it easy and accessible. So initially they had mobile mining on the app, which is basically airdrops, but they called it mobile mining. And his mission was to make the cryptocurrency, to make it accessible for people to earn and also to spend. So what the Electroneum is, they set up a platform called anytask.com, and it's like a gig, it's like Fiverr, one of those sites. But instead, the people get paid Electroneum. So you can design a website or write a song, whatever. Mostly digital gigs. You get paid Electroneum. The buyers pay the fees, which is nice, rather than being shared. And then Electroneum has done a lot of deals with mobile companies, utility companies. So you can actually use the Electroneum without having to go near a bank or even an exchange. And you can pay your ESP, your electrical bill, or your minutes. You can buy minutes with it. So it's quite powerful because in the Western world, we take it for granted you've access to a bank account. Love them or hate them, it's easy to get access to them. And then, of course, if you're living in a rural part of Africa, much harder. So, and even find an exchange. So if you can earn money, earn cryptocurrencies through providing digital services, if you have the internet, you can then use that ETN in exchange for utilities or minutes. So it's a powerful concept.
I hear you. Thank you so much, Gillian, for that. Now, women in blockchain, and you're one of our biggest role models. Why should that be significant? Why should women in blockchain be a significant fit?
Well, I often start my talks, when I do talks, with, if the Lehman Brothers had been the Lehman sisters, we mightn't have had the 2008 financial crash. So, and it goes to diversity. I mean, and it's not just gender, it's every kind of diversity. It's age, it's ethnicity, it's religion, it's sexual orientation, you name it. Diversity is important for everything. And blockchain is way too important for single white young men to control, for example, right? Not that I'm picking on that cohort, you understand, but it's way too important. And there have been lots of studies, and it's not just like a nice let's put a woman on the board, or let's put a person of color, or an LGBTQ person on the board, whatever. Studies have been done with Credit Suisse, Nordea, and McKinsey over the last 10 years. And when these are proper data-driven studies, when you put a woman in a position of leadership and decision-making in a company, their profits go up between 20 and 30%. They just go. It's like you're going, wow. But if you think about it, if you're all part of the same, if you are recruiting and hiring and promoting people that look and sound like you, you're not really innovating anymore. And apparently a lot of the companies on the Fortune 500, they all fall away after a couple of generations, because unless they innovate and bring in people with new ideas. And so women, we're 51% of the population. And we bring things to the table that are different from men. And I'm not trying to do, gender stereotypes or anything like that, because I break a whole bunch of those. Dreadful. Like, I'm not a domestic goddess, and there's lots of things that I don't do very well that my other womankind do. But it's just, we have a different way of thinking. I mean, people have different ways of thinking, but just the women, it's a good balance. You know what they say too as well? When you educate a woman and she gets a good job, not only do you help that woman, you help her family and you help her community. So there is something about that having women who are educated and working, there's a return it's hard to explain. And I personally probably am not one of those people that would be, but it's inspiring to see that. When you see that, and so like we need women, we just need women.
Very, very well articulated and very inspiring. My daughter should have been here to hear you say that.
Well, women are great, and there's a lot that, it's very quickly interject. There's a lot of things that said, oh, women don't help women, and women, are more, they're bitchy, excuse the French, or they don't support each other in the office. That's a load of codswallop. It literally is. Women are just as good as men, if not better, at nurturing talent. And there's the language that if a woman is assertive, she's called bossy, whereas a man is assertive. There's this sort of language, and it perpetuates these myths that, no, I mean, we've got different personalities, different quirks, but doesn't, why do you use different adjectives for the man or for the woman? So women are very good at nurturing other talent, so that's, yeah.
Amazing. Gillian, you're quoted as saying, and I quote, "Blockchain technology excites me." That's you.
Yes.
It is transformational and has the ability to really change things. That's you saying.
Well,
please paint for us a picture of the world in 20 years under blockchain.
Oh, that's a tough question. Sorry, I'm going to say, because I've already explained why I'm so excited about it. And actually, because I came from that position, I jumped in I was so enthusiastic. That's why I got so many speaking slots and, around the world, because I was so excited. 20 years time, well, I would like to see income equality. And it's not that I think that people, the other thing is you give everybody the same amount of money and then they do different things with it. It's not, but I would like to see, and people to have, a UBI is a wonderful idea, universal basic income. So people know that they have this resting amount that the government gives them, maybe in exchange for their data, whatever way it works. So you have enough to pay for certain things. And then if you want more, then you can go and earn more. And I think some of blockchain and cryptocurrencies gives you that possibility. And it's quite exciting, because I remember speaking to somebody and they were saying, what if money was love as opposed to, what does it say? Love of money is the source of evil, whatever, like think about the love of money is the source of all greed or evil. But when people love things, then they can make cryptocurrency out of things that they love. So that, you have a token or a passion and you're exchanging value between each other. And it's like maybe you're saving the world, maybe you're recycling plastic, maybe you're painting, maybe whatever it is that you're gardening, whatever it is you do that you love doing, and you're able to earn an income because you have a community that are sharing value in cryptocurrency. So it's not just to the moon and Bitcoin. It's like you can sustain yourself and you can then spend the money that you earn, because you say you're a gardener, you love gardening, and the money goes into a community where you can all reward each other and earn from each other. That's kind of interesting, because that would be a whole new way of looking at the world. Not going into offices every day, or not, we're saying, well, what is it that I want to do? Plus, those people say, AI, ML, machine learning, that will remove a lot of jobs. So if there's no work, what do we do? How do we do? So 20 years, maybe not. Maybe I'm talking maybe 100 years. But I think there's a movement towards rethinking. It's like, for example, I grew up in Dublin. And Dublin doesn't have, you enjoy the public transport. The Dubliners would be critical of the public transport, I have to say. Because a lot of cities, certainly in like an old city like Dublin, was built in the last 100 or so years, was built with the motor car in mind, the automobile in mind, rather than the pedestrian or the cyclist. So cities now are trying to rethink cities that are being built, smart cities, that it's not motor centric, which actually makes sense, because also young people today, they're not going to own a car. They're going to fractionally own a car, hire a car when they need. There's all these different ways. So it's, I don't know. It's kind of exciting. I think I'd love to come back in 100 years and see what actually happened and what rethinking has been done. And because, as I say, I grew up thinking about a city being dominated by cars, and I live in the countryside, so there's very little public transport. But what if the city was designed with people in mind, walkers? It'd be very, and also on the African continent, that's where you're having the biggest growth. I think Nigeria is not going to be the biggest population boom. So you wonder how those cities will be developed, and are they thinking about different ways rather than just the old ways?
Very interesting. That's very interesting, Gillian. Now I'll take you to a little bit of the tech space with this question. Talk us through very briefly, the evolution of Web 1 to Web 3. The functionalities of Web 3 that will make the blockchain change so phenomenal.
I was worried for a moment, because even though my first job was as a programmer, technically I get nitty gritty. But anyway, I can answer this one. So Web 1, when I try to explain to my non-techie friends, I say Web 1 is reading. So you're on the internet, you're reading websites. So, I mean, that was pretty phenomenal back in the day. You're reading. And then and also you're buying. E-commerce sort of comes into the Web 1 too as well. I mean, like, I remember back in the day, people would say, you never buy a dress or a book on the internet. Sure, my kids do nothing else but they don't buy dresses from shops, they buy them on the internet. So that's Web 1. And Web 2 is reading and writing. And with the writing, that means it's the social media, which has pros and cons, as we know. Obviously, it's been owned by the major tech giants. But Web 3 is read, write, and control or own. So the data comes back into the possession of the person who's actually contributing the data, which makes sense. So so it's that's how I say Web 1 is read, Web 2 is read and write, and Web 3 is read, write, and own. And that's where the blockchain comes in, and all the amazing things you can do with communities, which is very powerful.
Thank you, Gillian. Again, if it gives you much comfort, we have reached the 5th generation mobile network, also known as 5G. What is the relevance of that to what we are discussing today?
Well, I presume it means easier access to the internet. I mean, 5G, it's mobile and it's powerful and fast. So you don't have to have all your fixed line, your fiber cables, which are expensive to lay, especially if you're in a large geographically dispersed area. So the mobile is much faster. And I guess, like in Ireland, I know down the countryside, it's has been traditionally difficult to get good Wi-Fi. But I say 5G is, I mean, I'm moving house, as I mentioned before, and I'm getting 5G, and it's grand. There's no cables to be laid. I just have to buy my router and off I go.
Okay. Thank you very much. So I'll interrupt our discussion for just about 3 minutes. I'd like to invite back Paul. Paul, can you read me? Can you hear me? Paul, can you hear us? Your mic must be off.
Can you hear me?
Okay,
yes, I can hear you. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure you've been listening to the conversation with Gillian.
Yes.
It's really interesting. It is so different. It is so disruptive, for lack of a better word. Disruptive here to mean a good thing. And me, I'm beginning to take some very valuable lessons just listening to her and her story. Now, I'm giving you those about just 30 seconds to play that clip, and then 1.5 minutes just to talk through it before I pick up from there with Gillian. Over to you, Paul.
Enterprise blockchains have limitless potential, but privacy is a major challenge. How can businesses secure their private transactions on a public network, especially when enterprise blockchains have been closed, unaudited, centralized? Introducing Polygon Nightfall, designed for the needs of enterprises. Nightfall uses a hybrid approach to scaling to give enterprises an option that was considered impossible. ZK rollups keep transactions private on a public network. Optimistic rollups offer efficient, scalable transactions. Secured by Ethereum, Nightfall means trust, transparency, and credibility. Aiming to disrupt the $50 trillion global supply chain industry, Polygon Nightfall unlocks the true potential of enterprise blockchains and empowers businesses to connect and scale in powerful new ways. Polygon Nightfall. Mainnet beta is now live.
Sorry for interrupting you guys. We just wanted to play that so that Polygon is one of our, our earliest supporters in what we are trying to do to increase literacy and adoption of blockchain, and especially in this part of the world. So a lot of interesting things are happening. So just to let you know that, this thing about blockchain is not something that is not just out there in the air. There are actual practical solutions that are being addressed by quite a number of projects in the in the space. So just be lookout for very interesting years ahead of us. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Gillian.
Thank you so much, Paul. Thank you. Gillian, thank you for your kind indulgence. Now, I'll take you again to a place that I know you're very passionate about. As a writer, sitting at the apex of research and information, what themes or lessons are forming in blockchain technology that we should be aware of? Your view is helicopter. You get to see so many things before the rest of us do. What are these themes that are emerging that we should be aware of? Over to you, Gillian.
Well, you're right. I am very privileged. I get to speak to a lot of people with different ideas that I wouldn't have thought of on my own, and I wouldn't necessarily come across in my day-to-day life. And funny, just building on from that video from Polygon, the Layer 2 protocol and privacy, I had the privilege of doing some work for a privacy protocol called Panther Protocols, as it's called. There's a number of them in the space. And fascinating, because before I actually got involved with them, that a lot of people say, oh, privacy, nothing to hide, then why do you need private stuff, whatever, which is often sort of, tagged out, whatever. And it wasn't I worked for this company for 3 or 4 months, whatever. I learned so much that, for example, and it makes perfect sense that, in a democracy, the privacy of the ballot box is fundamental, because if the government knows which way you voted, you could have tariffs or bad things happen to you, like in China, where they rate you depending on what you do and what you drink and what you buy and what you drive and all the things you do. They are grading you the entire time. So privacy was something that I learned quite a lot. I thought, that's interesting. And of course, the ZK rollups are just like mind blowing. That technology is just like I know what it is. I know what it says it does. And someone explained to me once that with the zero knowledge proofs that it's like there's a room and there's a door. And there's somebody in the room, and you're outside by the door, and there's no other windows or anything in that room. And next minute, the person is beside you. And I went, okay, how does that work? So, sorry, that's just one thing. So, privacy it's a technology, obviously, the ZK rollups, but it's also zero knowledge proofs, and but it addresses something important. And we saw recently in the news the Tornado Cash, where the U.S. government said, oh, this is all being used for money laundering out of Korea. I think they were accusing it of. And they stopped. And even in Amsterdam, they arrested a developer. Whoa. So it makes no sense, because as we know in this world, people who are engaged in this world, that much more money laundering is done with the dollar and with fiat money. And all the banks, they get billed huge fines for assisting drug dealers and cartels and all the rest of it. And it's the money laundering that happens in crypto is infinitesimally smaller. And so it's like 0.05%, I think, of all transactions. And it's all transparent anyway. That's why there was a couple of, I think a boy and girl who did a hack on an exchange some time ago. I forget the actual details. But when they finally tried to move the money 3 years later, they were caught, because the agents were looking at the wallet. So when they finally moved that money, they were caught and went to jail. So yeah, things like privacy, how the world works. I think I learn a lot about that, and blockchain helps you see how it works, because again, go back to the idea of privilege and working hard and all the rest of it. It doesn't always pay off because there are things in this world that are inherently unfair. And until we know about it, how can you fight what you don't know? So I think it's a really good way of thinking about stuff. And also, I think too, I learned as well, things that you, again, just in my conversations with people, like supply chain. Blockchain is great for supply chain because of its mutability, transparency, all that stuff. And then as part of supply chain, a lot of the time, people who are in the developed world who want to buy the products want to know that they have they're not blood diamonds or or the coffee is fair trade, or whatever. But then you need to reward then the farmer who provides the data, which starts the chain right there to the final consumer. And I remember I was interviewing one founder who's had this supply chain protocol, and he said what they also do is they reward the farmers in their token, and then the farmers can get microloans as a result, or they can spend whatever they want to do. And at the time, well, that's lovely. And he said, of course, he said, you do realize a microloan, say $50, whatever, that could be a loan, full stop, to the farmer. And that's why you don't think about it, because $50 might be the cost of the dress that you're buying, but $50 could also pay for the seed to grow something, whatever. And it's just until these things sort of are brought to your attention, you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. So I don't know what I've learned, except that, or what trends are happening, except that I'm learning to think about things differently because other people are thinking differently, and I'm talking to them. So I probably haven't answered that question terribly well.
No, you've done very well. No. You captured it very, very, very well. You've given us a totally different perspective that's very useful. Very, very useful.
Oh, thank you.
Would you like me to move on to the next one?
I
know you've mentioned Africa a few times, but again, from where you sit, because I think you have a very good view of what's going on, where do you place Africa in the grand scheme of things?
A powerhouse.
Yeah, where do you place it? Yeah.
Because there's a couple of things going in your favor, as in the whole continent. It's population explosion. It's massive. So by sheer dint of numbers, there will be a huge, I think I was actually, I said to you before, I was at a conference in Cape Town before the lockdown, and they had some huge projections about, the cities of the future and where the population was going to be. So that's both an amazing thing and also a hindrance sometimes of trying to cope with the size of the population and how you look after them and build them and house them and feed them and water them. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Also, I think a lot of the times Africa has an opportunity to leapfrog technologies in particular. And we know it's a well-known example that landlines, we all had landlines in the developed world and then eventually went to mobiles. But in Africa, many places went straight to mobiles because there wasn't the infrastructure for the landlines, there weren't all the pylons and stuff. So you can leapfrog access technologies. And because I think a very young population too as well, and technology favors the young. So I think you have huge opportunities. But because the barriers to entry are coming down, because I mentioned that any task outside that gig, you don't need to be in an office with a big server and all the rest of it to be able to produce a website, for example. And especially young people, I'm desperate. I have a mobile phone, of course, but I do a lot more on my laptop than on my mobile phone. I write on my laptop, and I prefer to be on my laptop for a lot of things. But your young people, the laptop, they're going, what is that old-fashioned person doing with the laptop? They do everything on the mobile, on the smartphone. And that means that the barriers to entry are much less. In this world, 50 years ago, to get a good job, you would have had to maybe go to university or have a company on your, all the things that sort of the old ways of doing things. And nowadays, and it's rapidly changing because it's being able to do and to show that you can do, not necessarily where you were born, what your surname is, what your accent is, and what your parents did. It's enables people to come from many different places without the need for privilege.
Yeah, very, very, very interesting. There's the question of talent that has come up so many times when you're talking about Africa. Do you see a gap? And if the answer is yes, how do we bridge that gap?
Well, I think what you're doing here is very interesting. The young man I mentioned at the start of the program who ended up being billed as the president of Binance in New York. That was kind of mad. But I think because academic institutions are slow to move. Yeah. So if you can get clubs and societies in education, and actual fact, we should be teaching kids in primary school about financial stuff and cryptocurrencies. Actually, that should be taught from age, I don't know, 6, whatever it is. I mean, a child knows they want to get money to buy an ice cream, so they shouldn't. That should be taught at a much earlier age. So gaps, I think, it's just. But again, possibly, I don't know, possibly the educational departments across Africa maybe more flexible. I don't know, but it's just sometimes, like in the old world, you get. I mean, I went to Trinity College in Dublin, and I love my time there. It's a beautiful campus. It's right in the centre of Dublin. It's one of the top 100 universities in the world. So it's a great, and it's a very old university, and I loved it for all those reasons. But why shouldn't somebody else be able to do, by talent, just not by going to a certain institution in a certain part of the world? And don't get me wrong, I love my Trinity days, love them. And there's a joke, the joke said, how do you know someone's a vegan? Because they'll tell you. How do you know when someone at Trinity College Dublin? Because they'll tell you. So is this kind of sort of notion, whatever? But why should that be so? Why not someone who's got talent who can do something, who's a whiz kid in maths or art or design? Why can't they just do it and receive the reward for it? So I think maybe it's teaching young people that they can. So it's without waiting for the educational academic institutions to catch up. You can do it. You can do it.
Oh, great.
Confidence.
Very, very, very well put. I'm going to quote you again.
Oh dear.
We just have about 12 minutes. I'll run my last couple of questions very quickly. Then I'll look at the questions from the plenary. Those that I can put to you, I will, within, of course, the provision of the time available. I'm quoting you again. 5 things that most excite me about blockchain and crypto. It demonstrates access to finance. It democratizes access to finance, democratizes access to education, democratizes access to payment. Those are your words. Democratizes access to opportunity, and democratizes access to income equality. Those are your words. I'm sure you can recall them.
Yeah.
Then my question is, why is democratization that important?
It goes back to this privilege thing. Funnily enough, I didn't think we'd talk about privilege a lot this time, but privilege is fine. Nothing wrong with it, except if you haven't got it, it's not so good. And I just love the notion that we can democratize access to, if someone is keen and eager or talented or smart or interested, why can't they do what they want to do? I mean, if you're lazy and you want to lie on the beach, that's fine. You can do that too. I have no problem with that. But I just think there's so many barriers and roadblocks to people doing what they want to do, and who have a genuine desire to be something, to do something. And I just love the idea that blockchain, and I know it's not, it's the kind of the mentality, it can tear down those roadblocks and say, do you know what, you can do it. And that to me is very exciting. Again, I said, nothing in the privilege is, it is a thing, right? But if you have opportunity, it doesn't matter about privilege anymore. You make your own privilege, if you like, and that's very powerful. So I'm not an anarchist or anything like that. I say I went to Trinity, loved it, but I'd like to think that somebody who's really talented at something, they don't have to go to Trinity. They can do it in their own time, their own way, shape, or form. And that to me is that democratizing access to opportunity across the board, which is very exciting.
That is very, very interesting, Gillian. You've given me context. I was really trying to figure out why democracy within this space is so profound for you. Somebody has asked on the comment section, what has happened about crypto? There's been bad press about crypto. The crash and people have lost their money. What is it that excites you about crypto today?
Okay, I'll address the crash first, the recent crash, because it was very upsetting for me, especially DeFi didn't fail. Decentralized finance didn't fail, but CeFi failed, centralized finance. And one of them in particular, quite a few of them, they offered, like Celsius, they offered single mums and carpenters and hardware people, put your money in here, it's safe as houses, and then you can earn enough to pay your pensions, pay for your kids' education, whatever. That was very hard. When that failed, and who knows what'll happen then, when that failed, but it appears to have failed, stopped. That hurt me a lot because people who lost their money, they were ordinary folk just trying to make a better life for themselves and their kids. And that wasn't to the moon, that wasn't Olympus Dow, that wasn't all the crazy stuff. It's a bit like the OneCoin that still rumbles on. and it preys on people. And again, the people who want coin, yes, of course, there's an element of trying to make money, but who wouldn't want to make money for their children's education? And you've got to put it back. People are tarnished by this greed thing. This greed is also just a desire to make things better. So it is painful, and it does hurt when things like that happen. It really, really does, because it's not nice. However, as I said at the start, C5 failed, the centralized finance. Those Voyager, Celsius, BlockFi, they're all centralized institutions, and they failed because they were human beings taking actions. DeFi is not failing. DeFi is contracts that are transparent, and if you don't like them, you don't get into them, whatever. So it's fine. So, although I think ultimately it will be fine, but it's crypto. So it's only 11 years old, so it's like a toddler still. It's making a few mistakes, having a few tantrums along the way. But having said that, I do not diminish people who lost their money in that recent crypto. That's horrifying. So,
great stuff. Top 100 Women of the Future, a legacy project published by Global Village Publication, Inc. Top 100 Women of the Future. You fall into that category.
I have no idea how.
What are you going to do with that? That's the question. What are you going to do with that? You're a woman of the future. A lot is being put on your shoulders. What are you going to do with that?
Well, I often say, I advocate for women in this space because we need women, right? And I often say that if you look at me, I'm not scary. I'm a middle-aged, middle-class lady. Nothing scary about me. So if I'm in this space, and you can say, well, maybe it's all right. Maybe it's okay. Maybe it's a bit safe. So women of the future, that's a bit scary because I'm 57 years on this planet. Now, I'd like to go along a bit longer. Thank you very much. My mum is 91. I want to keep on going for a bit longer. So it's, but what I would like to do is people I started off in the space. I used to advocate a lot for young women in particular, because it's important for young people to get into the space, because they're not the people of the future. They're the people of today, But then I also started to realize that for women my age, there's a bit of a long-winded way, that because the divorce rate is so high in most of the world, 50% here in Ireland is terrible. And women, when they get divorced, they are often financially negatively impacted, because maybe they're taking a career break, maybe they're minding elder parents, or they're with kids or whatever. There's a lot of reasons why. I'm not saying it's plain sailing for everybody, but women tend to be impacted badly by divorce. And I'm thinking, well, maybe I should talk to the women my age who are divorced, who are trying to get their lives back in order again, and say that there is something. Because often what happens to women when they hit 50, they become invisible. They just fade into the background. So I'm going, don't be invisible. Be loud, be proud, get out there, So that's the best thing I can do for women of the future. I hope I last a goodly many years to come, and I don't go too quiet.
Very interesting. And I realize you do so much. I don't know, you sing in a choir.
Very badly.
You broadcast, you write, you write articles, you're an advocate of this technology.
I'm very lucky.
What makes you forge ahead, Gillian? What makes you forge ahead?
Well, I do many things. I'm a polymath. I do many things badly, of course, as well. I'm not saying I'm an expert at them. I'm privileged to have a career. Certainly, it's come along that I'm allowed to do all these things. And recently, blockchain, I've been doing NFTs, and I've been doing art, and I've been doing lots of things that I haven't done in the past. So it's been amazing, and it's great to be able to do it. It's part of this who I am. But what makes me go forward? It's very obvious. I have children. I think anybody who, I'm going to cry now. My kids are grown up and they're amazing. And I want the world to be a better place for them. And I'm sorry for that. It's just but it's just, I think when you have children or a loved one, or it could be a pet, it could be a poodle. I don't know. Once you love, you want a better world for the people you love, or the poodle, the dog that you love. I don't know. I'm not putting it just on childish people, but once you love, you want to make it better for the people that you love. So my children.
That is profound, Gillian. And thank you for sharing one of your deepest emotions. Children it is. We embrace that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, speaking to our young women that are listening to you today, and it will not only be young women, everybody listening to you today, what would be your advice to them? What would you advise them relative to the technology that we are all confronted with going forward?
Yeah. Well, when I went through the very bad patch, I had about 10 years where everything was going wrong. Losing my home, losing my job, losing money, losing everything, and bailiffs, and you name it. And my mum used to always say to me, mum was a great inspiration to me. She'd say, when things are really, really bad, and we're talking really bad, she'd say, ever onwards and upwards, maybe sideways, but never backwards. And I think that's a good life lesson. So even though I probably was going backwards at a rate of knots, my advice is to keep on going forward, because you put one foot after the other. It's amazing. You think you're going nowhere, or you're so slow, and you look back and you go, oh, I've come quite a way. So I would say to anybody, and that going forward is going forward to what you love, what your passion is, what you want to do, whether it's to lie on a beach or write a play, whatever it is that makes you happy. Just keep on moving forward. That's what I would say.
Thank you so much, Gillian. I will not let you go before asking this. What resources can you direct our listeners to so that they can better understand the subject we're conversing about today? What resources would you direct us to?
Do you know the most important thing for me certainly was meetups. Now we're lockdown is gone now, and I just think meeting ordinary folk in your locality so you can relate to them. And the meetups, they're mostly free. I mean, conferences are great too as well. They tend to be expensive. But the meetups, and just if there isn't one in your area, set one up and go along and ask questions and invite people who know more than you to come and talk maybe, or to share their experiences. And especially founders, they love talking about what they're doing. So you can get some quite, it's like I always admire, I was involved with the Debating Society in Trinity, and we get some big names. You think, why do big names come? Because they love coming. They love being invited to speak. People, even big people are human beings as well. So in terms of resources, yes, the internet and blockleaders.io and all those things too are all very interesting. But there's no substitute, I think, for meeting people and then listening to something and saying, what does that mean? What do they talk about that? Or asking them, can you explain that to me? And also you get the people's enthusiasm and their affection, and it's all like woo. So that for me, I would say go to your local meetup, and if one doesn't exist, set it up and just start it. 2 people, 3 people, it'll grow in time, and go and meet in person if you can.
Wow. Gillian, that is all we had time for. We appreciate your busy schedule, moving houses and all. I recognize that pursuant to this, you'll be back again, boxing, preparing for your move. I can't thank you enough for making the time for us and sharing so deliberately the knowledge that you have. You've left us the richer, and we hope that in the coming future, you'll still be a friend of Abia. We've really found your insights valuable. And again, on behalf of all of us, I want to say a big thank you.
Well, I want to say thank you to you for inviting me. It's always a privilege to be allowed to rant and rave. And thank you too for all the research you did. It's very flattering. I'm going, did I say that? Gosh.
Yes, you
make
did.
it sound very good. So thank you very much.
And I would like to invite the director of Abia just to say a word of thanks as well as we bid you goodbye. Hoping our paths will meet again. Paul, I've had so much fun. I don't know about you. I've had so much fun.
Right? Yeah. Thanks so much, Gillian.
Thank you.
It was a very interesting discussion, and we really enjoyed the insights that you're able to pass across. And I would also like to thank all our viewers, and we look forward to having more such discussions with you, Gillian. So thanks so much. We wish you all the best, and I know that one of these fine days, probably soon, you'll be probably one of the invited guests for one of our physical meetups. So thanks so much.
No, thank you. It's a great privilege, and I thank you, because it's lovely. It's really nice. Even though I forgot about moving for the last hour, which was also very pleasurable. It's about positive things. So it was a great honor. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Gillian. Thanks,
Thank
our
you.
audience. Until we meet again. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.